Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have Shivani here, one of our alumni from the Drucker School of Management, as well as an MBA and then a Master of Professional Health. We're also welcoming Vaishnavi, who's one of our students in the Career and Professional Development Office. She is our Industry and Campus Partnership Specialist, and she'll be facilitating the conversation today. As you heard, today we are recording this and we will be posting it on our website in a few weeks. So just that you're aware of that. And again, thank you for joining us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Shivani. Hello, everybody. I have the pleasure of introducing Shivani, our alumni today. So Shivani is a MPH and MBA dual degree graduate from Claremont Graduate University, where she completed a health policy fellowship at Jambori Housing, analyzing data regarding the social determinants of health across properties and advocating for increased access to targeted resources for vulnerable resident populations. That's a mouthful. Prior to graduate school, she completed her Bachelor's of Science in Public Health Sciences at the University of California, Irvine, with a minor in health informatics. She served as a karate instructor at Young Champions from July 2017 to January 2022. Shivani is passionate about promoting positive health outcomes and improving lives in communities that she works with through increased availability and advancement in healthcare. She joined Cigna in January of 2022 as a healthcare engagement consultant for the Southern California select market. As an engagement consultant, Shivani is responsible for driving consistent wellness program development, guidelines, and delivery to Cigna's select clients. She works with companies to promote, activate, and help modify employee behaviors to support a healthier workforce that elevates productivity and drives business growth. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your experiences as a graduate student and as an industry professional. We have tried our best to introduce you, but we would like to know a little bit about yourself, including your Drucker MBA and MPH journey, and where your career took you following. And how do you see the two programs coming together in your journey?
Great. Thank you so much for that comprehensive introduction. Hi, everyone. For those of you who just joined, my name is Shivani. And yes, I was a Drucker graduate in 2021. So I did my MBA and my Master's in Public Health, kind of taking it a little bit backwards prior to graduate school. I have, born and brought up here in Southern California. I pretty much stayed local when I did my undergrad degree, went to UC Irvine, and also did a bachelor's in public health. So during that time, my whole focus was mostly in healthcare and understanding, where I fit in because it was such a broad field. But really, I learned kind of where my passion was through my internships that I was doing. I did an internship at a hospital, UC Irvine Medical Hospital. And then during that time, I was also involved with the campus club, which was focused on consulting. So kind of drawing from those experiences, I knew I wanted to go more in the business aspect of healthcare. So I learned about Claremont's dual degree program, the MPH MBA dual degree, and I thought it was too good to be true. Had some conversations with the admissions team, and they talked about how it's really what you make of it when you're going through the program. The flexibility of the MBA and the mobility is kind of what I wanted as well, moving forward in my career in public health. So as I came in to the program, I quickly realized that it really is what you make of it. There isn't kind of a cookie cutter template of what a dual degree student would look like. It really is what your passions are, and how the classes that you take, the extracurriculars, the fellowships, the internships that you do, how that all fits into that. So I would say my biggest takeaway from my time at Drucker and CGU as a whole and just the dual degree program was really finding tangible project work that I did with each of the classes, the actual skills that I learned that were very different, especially because business as a field was new to me. So being able to really apply and learn as much as I could there, and then building my network with the fellow classmates that I was with, and the staff, my position with the career office. I also had applied and pretty much worked with the career office throughout my time as well, as a student. So I think all of those things, all of those aspects really added and enriched my time in graduate school.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That's very inspiring because I'm in a doctorate of public health degree, and it just resonates so much because I want to work in healthcare, provide a comprehensive environment for oncology and policy building. So thank you for all your experiences. Moving on to the next question, what does a typical day look like, and what skill sets do you rely on heavily in your current role?
Yeah, great question. A typical day in my current role as a consultant really varies, honestly. When I first joined the company and in my role, they had said, yeah, there's not going to be that much traveling, especially because when I joined, it was, at that cusp of COVID, or it was towards the end, but there was still, everyone was largely remote. So I was like, okay, there's not going to be that much travel. I'll probably just be working from home. But that did evolve over time. And now I find myself, especially this fall season, it's a busy time for health insurance with the open enrollment going on. So I am traveling a lot, going to visit my clients on site, which I appreciate because a large part of my time had been mostly working from home. So going out and actually seeing the clients that I'm working with and the employees of the companies that I work with in person, being able to teach. So a large part of my role right now is health education. So educating employees about their benefits, and then working with the executive leadership of these companies to help them understand how they can really utilize and leverage their own resources, existing resources, and our support to roll out a total population health program. And that really is them investing in their employees, and then also seeing that business growth and productivity. So kind of weighing in both sides, the incentives of both sides with health for their employees. Obviously we want to encourage that, but sometimes when business comes into play, you're like, okay, where is this going to take me? Why am I investing all of these resources? Well, it's also going to drive that productivity for your business as well. So wearing those different hats, I think sometimes I struggle to just understand, okay, what is my day going to look like today? So I think having my calendar out, really mapping it out that way. Sometimes I can just spend days where I'm just on meetings online all day. Sometimes I won't have meetings and I'll just be creating deliverables, reports, and then really just organizing myself on my emails and things like that too. So different things every day.
That's wonderful. Michelle, you have a question.
I do, because it's one of my challenges too, Shivani, is, walking in and thinking you're going to do one thing and then you do something, you have to do so many different things. How did your graduate education or just life in general get you to the space where you were comfortable jumping from one task to the other and not knowing what your day would look like?
Yeah. I think when it comes to graduate education, I think being able to, especially for me when I was in the dual degree program, putting on a different hat for every class that I was in was a big thing in itself. Going from, a marketing project that could be on a completely different company or different aspect of the brain that you're using, and then going to your next class, which is like public health oriented or like a totally different topic. I think in that way, I'm utilizing my brain in different ways, and I'm kind of realizing that that's where I'm at right now too. And then also, I think a big part of graduate education was also not just education, but also, you're networking on the side. You're trying to build your own skills outside of what you have academically. So I think keeping that practice up And as Vishnu mentioned earlier, I also was teaching karate on the side too. So having those different things that I was constantly doing and different responsibilities, I think keeping that in practice, there's no one size fits all and how to keep that up. And I feel like even with that practice, it can still feel overwhelming when you're in a position where your work requires to do different things. But I think that's why it's very important to have those days where you're just blocking off to yourself. Like I'll physically make sure that, Mondays or Fridays, I'm not trying to take any meetings and really make that time for myself and just keeping organization a priority.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
I just wanted to follow up on when you mentioned about COVID and the transition of meeting clients in person. How has that transition been? How has that also affected you as a professional and your organization? Because now you can have in-person one-on-one conversations with clients, but earlier it was more of a virtual world. So has that been a difference? And if it is, then how did it change, or what were the impacts?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was a big change just because I had, kind of gone straight from virtual classes and, completing my graduate education virtually too, and then moving to the job, which was all virtual. And then as we came back in person, I think the number one thing was understanding etiquette behind, you're on the screen, you can have like your notes up sometimes where you have something, a script that you can kind of read, and there's more support that way, and there's just a routine that you come up with when you're virtual versus when you're in person, learning to incorporate your body language again, especially when your role really hinges on relationship building and communication. I think that was a big aspect, and not like taking time to just learn it, but I think just taking time to practice and reorient myself to that. And I think it helped. We also kind of went back in person for in office as well, excuse me, once or twice a week. So being able to collaborate with my team members as well, so we could even practice with each other, practice giving presentations with each other too. That really helped.
That's wonderful. I mean, for me personally speaking, it was hard to just walk out of the pandemic and be in person to relearn everything socially. So
Right? Yeah.
hard.
It was
Hard to
it
keep
was
up
hard.
with. That's the new normal, I guess.
Yeah. It's a new
Well,
normal. I mean, I still have clients that sometimes prefer so it's also taking into respect, respecting others and what their preferences as well, because they will prefer to be remote. And it's like, okay, yeah, we can definitely go back to that. Just being flexible, I think.
well, thank you. If we were to look back at your on-campus position at Drucker Career Strategies office as a student assistant, what are the skills that you learned that were beneficial for your current role or your career journey, just in general?
Yeah. I think my time working at the career office, it was very valuable to me, especially that was kind of the time period where I was, applying to a lot of jobs, also being able to practice interviewing. I think during that time, a big asset to me was being able to have ownership over a lot of the creativity I brought to my role. I was able to start a newsletter for Drucker. I think I feel like it's still ongoing, I think, but I remember during that time there was a gap that I knew that we needed to fill, and finding that gap of like, okay, how can we communicate better? We're on this virtual world now. We're not doing a lot of in-person events. How can we get, job postings out there, advice out there career-wise? So finding that gap and then being able to use put on my creative hat and create, what I could during that time to, and then be able to communicate and talk about that during my interviews too, of, problem solving and having ownership over some sort of deliverable during that time. And then also a big part is, as I was in that role, learning the behind the scenes on, what are the more valuable tools within career building and networking. And then it forced me to also push myself and be out there more, because I was the one, kind of the face of, at the time, of career at the career center. So I was like, okay, I need to also be actively doing these things. So I think those were the two things I could say were big about my role during that time.
Thank you. Well, I can definitely second you on that, because now that I work in Career Center, it does put you to push your limits and experience greater things, having that network, how to communicate and brand yourself out there, because we're just starting. So you got to learn these as you move on in your career. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because we mentioned about karate, I'm coming to that question of how has your extracurricular position as a karate instructor helped you in your professional development? And if it has, then how has that happened? How did you find this passion for karate? Just a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So I had been doing karate since I was like 10 years old. So I had been doing it for a really long time. And I became an instructor when I was in college, and then I knew that I wanted to continue. It was definitely hard to, I was only teaching for about 2 days a week, but even being able to keep that responsibility up as I was a student was hard. And then as I transitioned to working and keeping that, I was so grateful that I kept that passion there, and I kept, I didn't give up on teaching, because at that time I was like, okay, I don't really need this job. It was more of, I wanted to continue to pursue something that's outside of, what I wanted to do professionally. Um, the major thing that I would say that karate brought me was discipline, and also being able to talk to a diverse community and population, because I taught for a nonprofit organization that had offered karate to kind of more of the low income communities where I live. So, being able to talk to families, parents, and then now I'm kind of seeing that reflected in my role. I didn't know that it would be, but a lot of my roles, sometimes I'm going to companies and communicating with, let's say, like a manufacturing client where the employees are completely different from, like last week I was at a law firm speaking to lawyers. So it's like a completely different population. So kind of reflecting on that experience that I had, that kind of was helpful to me now. I'm realizing with how I can communicate and be confident also in a presence of a lot of people just staring at you, lots of eyes at you as well, and then being able to speak to them. So
That's wonderful. Do you plan to get back to karate and have a workshop maybe for us at some point?
I would love to do that. Yeah, I did that for we have in my company kind of internal employee resource groups. So I did do that just kind of as a fun thing. So if you ever want to do a karate like a session, you can reach out to me.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you speak to us a bit about your culture at your organization, how the culture at your organization is, and if it was very different, how did you blend into it? What were the steps, and what is the advice that you would give to a current graduate or recent graduate?
Yeah, I would say culture is a big thing, and I'm really grateful that the culture at my workplace, I think the best way I could describe it is very collaborative and supportive and very inclusive. So at the beginning, when I first joined, I had completely no idea that I would really be more of in the health insurance industry. And I didn't have, prior background or knowledge about how insurance worked at all. So I thought at first it'd be a huge learning curve. I might just be thrown in. But luckily, being, especially with a company like Cigna, it's national, and they have a lot of resources to aid in learning, mentorship. And my team that I was a part of here in SoCal, we all are pretty close now, tight knit. But even when I joined, everyone was very open to helping out, teaching, collaborating with me. Even now, with all of us, we all have individual clients, individual work that we're doing. It's not really necessarily collaborative work, but we'll always pull in our experiences if someone has a question of like how they've this challenge that they've had with a certain client, we'll kind of be able to tag team and talk to each other about it. And then even being able to be back in person in the workplace, talking to people outside of my direct team, being able to interact with matrix partners that are, separate departments, but kind of parallelly aligned. Everyone's very inclusive and eager to learn about each other's roles as well, and how we all kind of complement each other in taking forward the business. So so the few words that I mentioned of collaborative, supportive, and inclusive is really how I would describe the culture.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. I guess that is the most important ever since we have stepped out of pandemic. That has been more to highlighted talk that these are important factors for an organization to run smoothly and successfully. So we hold that very high here as well. So
and I will add, just going back to being back in person versus remote, I think one thing was everyone making sure that they have clothing that reflects that too. We had to make sure that we had business casual or business formal clothes. So that was a big thing for me, just because when you're coming out from the remote work, you can be presentable on top, but you didn't necessarily have to emphasize it. But being back in person, being in front of clients, I always have to make sure that everything's on point. I'm reflecting how I reflect myself and carry myself is an indication of my company and how we run our business as well. So that was a big thing too.
Just to rally on the attire that we spoke about with the culture of the attire, virtual and online, in person. I'm always curious to know about this. So if I'm working from home, it's a more comfortable space for me. And not saying that you're always whiling away time, but you can stretch, you can move around a little bit. But when you're at work, it's like, I can't wait to go home. Has that happened with you, which of being in person now?
Yeah, no, definitely that has happened, especially when, coming into person isn't mandatory necessarily. So sometimes you'll be in the office and you'll see like there's big space and there's only like 3 of us there, and it feels draining to just be there for the next 6-7 hours. So I think what helps is I really found my favorite spots nearby that I can incorporate walks into. I have an Apple Watch, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get my steps in today, figure out what my walking, find little excitements that I could when I'm going to the office. So, mapping out different routes. My office is near the John Wayne Airport in Orange County. So I'll sometimes go outside and then it'll be the time when like the airplanes are coming in. So just finding the little things that are different during the day when I go to the office is nice to have. And then finding my favorite coffee spot that I have, and then lunch spots, and then trying to tag team and whoever's in the office be like, oh, let's all walk together and get lunch together. So we have that collaboration and we can talk about things beyond just work, and also establish more of a personal, friendships too in the office.
That's wonderful. Because I'm still a student, I haven't walked into the professional industry life yet. And when you're in a university, in an institute, you're always, I wouldn't say sheltered like a baby, but you're always protected by everybody, your faculty, staff, everyone that you're working with. Just stepping out of the industry is scary for me sometimes. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to meet all these people who probably will care what I do, but not care about me, just in general. Whereas the staff that we have here is very caring about the
Yeah, that was one thing I remember working at the career office, especially sitting at the front desk. You would see so many people walk by, and you can just have open conversations with everyone, and being able to walk around the campus too. It's so beautiful, and really take advantage of all the green trees. I don't see that many green trees near my office. So that was really nice. But yeah, I think I'm lucky that I at least have a few people that, I like to talk to on a daily basis. So finding that at least one person that makes it fun to come to work is sometimes it's hard to do, but also, if you're able to do that, I think that's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. Thank you. So if I was to ask you about this, what kind of opportunities are available at your company or a company like yours? with
Yeah,
respect
so
to MPH?
mhm. Yeah, so for at Cigna, it is a health insurance company. So, we have lots of roles. My role specifically as an engagement consultant is kind of, I would say, the best blend of that I found for my MBA MPH, where we're still technically under the sales umbrella, where we have, our sales partners that we work with. They're the ones making sales, drawing up the contracts, getting our clients, and then I'm kind of there as the relationship management throughout the year. So having that hat on, and then also with public health, leaning on that as a subject matter expert, being able to bring, health promotion and education out there, I would say this type of role is great for anyone with that dual degree. There's also, as I mentioned, the sales aspect. We have client managers, we have account managers who really work on um, the business aspect, and then there's also, finance, risk, and underwriting. Those who are interested in more of the rates and the numbers and finance aspect, lots of opportunities there. And then even with more data and data analytics, I would say that's a growing um, role in our department in our company as well, just because we have a lot of emphasis on data tracking, reporting, and measurement too.
That's wonderful. Very interesting. So if I'm thinking from a student perspective, what is the best way for students to search, find, and apply for these opportunities if they were wanting to do that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I would say directly applying on the Cigna Group website is the best way to apply. But they're always posting on LinkedIn and Indeed, I think are the more popular platforms. So if you do find the job postings on there, it will take you directly to apply on Cigna's website. So I would say those are the two ways that you can definitely find a lot more information. And of course, if anyone has any questions in the group, feel free to find me on LinkedIn and message me and ask me about, the roles or anything like that. Definitely open to that.
That's wonderful. Because we were talking about applying for, I'm sorry, before I move forward, Michelle, you have a question.
Oh no, well, mine's not super important. But I'll ask it. So as you start to delve in, I mean, you've been out now for a couple of years, and you're thinking about, continuing to grow and flourish in where you are. But share with me in the sense of professional development opportunities, or how you stay in tune and abreast of all the knowledge, because especially in the industry that you're in, it changes all the time, and it can change within the different insurance components too. And so just wanted to get an idea of, what they do and what type of continual training they do for you, or lack of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so when I came in, we had like every new hire, there's at least 6 months of training that we get on everything regarding Cigna. And then just to keep on top of, as you mentioned, the changing trends, what's happening in our company internally changes, or externally, we have monthly trainings within our um, team locally, and then we have about, I would say, quarterly national trainings. So there's a lot of things that get put on my calendar pretty often that are, um, topically focused on either the industry or, changes happening internally, or, um, just refreshing ourselves on the health insurance and the benefits and what we need to keep in mind as we're going into this season, specifically our open enrollment season. And yeah, so that's continually being done. And I would say personally, just beyond that, I like to also, just like we do on LinkedIn, try to, reach out to people to connect, to have coffee chats. I do that internally. We have a national team, so I try to reach out to people in different departments than myself. I reach out to my mentor that I had in the beginning to try to keep, nourishing that relationship there. I will, reach out to the different matrix partners, as I mentioned. It doesn't happen as much as I'd like. I definitely want to do more of it. because you get so bogged down with your work, you forget to think beyond that. So I definitely try to schedule in. I mentioned that I block off Mondays and Fridays to just not have meetings. So those are the days where I'll try to think about that stuff as well, professional development. And then even networking just internally to see, what else is out there. Who knows if, maybe if I find something else interesting, I would love to learn about other roles that are out there internally in my company as well. So I think that aspect never stops. Definitely once you have a role and you're in a position, I was told this by my mentor, just don't get too comfortable. Basically, she would say, like, if you're feeling comfortable, it's good, but it's not the right, you don't want to feel that for too long, essentially.
Thank you. Yeah, that is so
Yeah,
true.
thank you for the
If you
question.
feel too comfortable, then you get complacent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It just brings Michelle's words back to me when she says, if you get too comfortable, you're not growing. You have to step out of there. You
Yeah,
have
so
to
true.
grow that position. I know that you mentioned LinkedIn website and networking. So for knowledge of students who are wanting to do informative interviews with people at different companies, I also remember you mentioning that you would reach out to team members from other departments. So how do you go with that process? How does that conversation flow?
Yeah. Usually I will try, uh, as you kind of mentioned in the beginning, how you did some research on me on LinkedIn. I will do that too. I'll try to do as much digging as I can on the person I want to reach out to. Obviously not too much because you don't want to come on too strong, but just enough to know, have a point of interest where I can have that opening line of, I have this interest, or if it's someone in a completely different industry or different position than mine, it's more from the aspect of learning and wanting to learn about them. I try not to be too much like have a question where it's like I want something from them. It's always going to be from the angle of, I want to learn from them, or just have a conversation. And with keeping in mind the time, sometimes I know, especially on LinkedIn, sometimes professionals don't have that time to talk, so I'll start it just through messaging, be like, oh, I would love to at least maybe ask some questions on here. Sometimes that ends up happening, or through email, and then grows from there. So yeah, I feel like just knowing a little bit about the person that you're approaching and what you want to learn, and but also just being open and patient with it too.
Thank you. To follow up on, this is based on your position, your current role at your company. I'm so sorry, I blanked out the question. Oh, yes. So since you're more employee or client facing, how important is networking in your industry?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that's probably one of the biggest parts of my role. When I came on, really big emphasis was relationship building, communication, and keeping people invested in what I am bringing to the table or what I'm offering. So keeping those things in mind, I think it's a major part of my role, external facing especially. And then with the relationship building, I think also just remembering that it's also good to let loose and be relaxed, not to always come on as, just with business in mind or work in mind. It's also good to nurture those relationships with just, personally connecting as well, and finding, ways that there's similarities or connections. Because as I mentioned, a lot of my clients are in different fields. Sometimes it's fields that I'd have no, or a business I have no idea about, but I'll try to, again, do my homework and understand what I can about the company before I, approach the leader that I'm talking to. And then, getting them to open up, asking that. I think that informative interview or informal interview questions that you have networking, I think that comes into play a lot with those types of conversations too.
That's wonderful, because when I first came to this country, I come from India. I'm an international student, and I was very shy to talk to anybody. I felt like I'm going to ask a silly question. And a lot of times, a lot of students might have that feeling that how do I reach out to somebody
Mhm.
who is at a higher position in this company or even at an educational institution. So just reaching out to people and having that conversation, which is, like you said, doesn't have to be very strong. You can be relaxed and try to get to know the
Mhm.
person, their work, their interests. That was hard for me initially, but I think I'm
Yeah.
kind of working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, even currently, I was so used to being the one asking that now as I'm working, people will reach out to me on LinkedIn and then I start to notice, okay, okay, this is the type of approach that I like versus like, or this is the type of note that I would want to answer versus like this type of note. And usually it's people who are just coming from a very, you know, they're formal, but not super formal and not trying to ask directly about my job or directly about like, oh, you have this role's open, like, you know, what can I do to get, having that direct approach about just the role and not asking about me first. I think I've noticed that, I tend to want to answer someone who wants to coming from a direction where they want to just learn first or, um, you know, have an easygoing approach to it. And then once I start talking to them and then that comes out, I think that's more organic.
Thank you. Hey, Deborah, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Shivani, I know in our office, we work with a lot of students who are going to be graduating soon and trying to find a job. Do you have advice for them? Like how did you find Cigna? What brought you to there? What was kind of your process, especially with a dual degree? I think students struggle of how do I combine these two degrees and what kind of roles are out there? So could you share a little bit about that process for yourself and how you ended up at Cigna?
Yeah, definitely. During that time, so when I was in the dual degree program, I knew that I wanted to be first, primarily, I wanted to be more on the hospital side because I had done a prior internship at a hospital. So I was first looking at, hospital administration and business roles in hospitals nearby. And then as I was applying, I realized, it was pretty competitive market, especially during that time, breaking into a hospital administrative fellowship. So I branched out and looked at different companies that I hadn't thought of before, but I saw roles with the responsibilities being, specifically skill sets and responsibilities that were blending into things that I have done or had experience with. So I really my tactic at first was just mass applying at first. This was like I think October when I would mass apply and just have always attaching a cover letter. I think I noticed that a lot of people sometimes will see that cover letter is optional, but I would always attach that and then make sure it's personalized and everything like that. And then with Cigna specifically, when I applied on the website, I didn't think that I was qualified for the role at the time because I felt like, okay, I have no experience in this industry. Let me just put my resume out there. And then I noticed that there was a recruiter email at the bottom of the website. So I also looked up the recruiter on LinkedIn, sent a note as well to her. I think just mentioning that I wanted to, I noticed the open role and I had applied and would love to learn a little bit more about it. So I think that approach helped a lot, took it beyond just cold applying. But if, sometimes there isn't a name that you can directly reach out to, but finding someone at that company that is working there that you can maybe just ask questions about how they're liking, the company culture, kind of some of the questions that were asked today. Just having that sort of in as well helps a lot. Thank you for that question. I see another question too.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh.
Yes, Katrina.
Hi, Shivani. Thank you so much for coming today. I
you.
just wanted to ask because I'm one of the students who struggle with sending like a note on LinkedIn because I'm always wondering, oh no, what are they gonna think? Do you have any advice for someone like me, especially considering that you have been receiving those kinds of messages online?
Yeah, yeah. I would say kind of what I was saying earlier, but just making sure that I would say you're asking about the person. So find an interest or something in their profile. Maybe it's in their bio, their about section, or their experiences that relates to you or that you want to learn more about. And then kind of having that as an approach, not having too much, like too long of a note either. Maybe just in your first or second line, getting to the point of, hey, I came across your profile and you were really active in this, and I would love to learn more about it. Something as easy as that. And then also setting an expectation of if, would love, not just would love to learn about that, but saying, would love to see if you had time in the next 2 weeks for a quick chat. Or I usually keep it, when I'm reaching out, I usually keep it at that. And then from there, I'll just say, okay, you know what? I don't know this person. If they respond, they respond. If they don't, it doesn't really, nothing happens. Nothing happens to me personally. So just send that note, and then you'll see from them, the cadence that they would like. If they would rather keep it online, that has happened to me where, they'd rather just message and, ask your questions on here and I'll answer. And it's like, okay, that's totally fine. And then keep that conversation going. And then eventually maybe they'd want to, take it to a conversation or a meeting. But yeah, I would say just getting to the point in a few lines, and then never try not to be direct about, if you've never talked to this person, saying, oh, I noticed that this opening happened in your company. Like, can you refer me, or something like that. I think that would come out a little bit later as you're talking to the person. So hopefully that helps. And if you have any questions, feel free to, you can practice on me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Shivani. We have a chat here from Rolly. He's our associate director at Career Center. He says, "Hi Shivani. It seems that you were able to explore academic programs to tailor your academic experience towards your current position. What advice do you have for current CGU students that may be interested in blending business and public health? And what is necessary to code switch between MBA and MPH, or how did you find a medium?"
Yeah, I would say right now, as of now, I think how I went about kind of blending those two, I would say I really led with the public health aspect. And because I had a background in it and then did my master's in it, I kind of positioned myself as more of a, subject matter expert in this field. And then with the MBA degree, I think I relied more on incorporating more hard skills. The projects that I've done in classes, I would always incorporate like a healthcare aspect to it. If it was a company, like I think it was a marketing class or strategy class where we had to pick a company. I picked a company that was in the healthcare field, and then was applying a financial analyses to that. So being able to communicate that, I've in interviews or during even my resume or cover letter, I will always try to, the way that I blend it is more of like, okay, I have these hard skills that I've learned through my MBA program, through my MPH program, but really my expertise is in healthcare, if that makes sense. I think it's still something that I am learning and growing into, and sometimes struggling to communicate that. I find myself, it happens. But I think as of now, that's kind of where I'm at, where being able to, I don't think I had to code switch necessarily. I know that sometimes happens where you have to maybe completely take one hat off, but I haven't found myself needing to do that as of yet.
That's wonderful. Thank you. appreciate the response. Extremely helpful to know your thought process and how you conveyed this to your employers. So thank you. It's a note from Ro, as a response to your
Yeah,
answer.
thank you for the question. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's something that I don't stop and think about, how did I do that? It just happens, or it's just something that I wrote to myself, or how I prepared myself when I was applying and everything like that. So it's good to think about too. So if anyone has any other questions about that, or would like to have a conversation about that as a dual degree student, or even someone in public health, we can definitely take that offline too.
Absolutely. I've taken a class in microeconomics as a base for that class with politics, and this was a transdisciplinary class, as CG provides transdisciplinary learning too. But since public health has been my first love, I started with that as my background. Every time a question would pop for economics, I would still think from a public health perspective. It took a time
Exactly.
to kind of switch gears, but yes, so your experience does add a lot of value. And thank you.
Yeah. I think that's very common. Even just, yeah, I feel like every industry has a place where you can kind of think with that MBA cap as well. So I think that is that's what I found valuable about the MBA, and just that mobility and flexibility of it.
Thank you. Yes, Michelle, you have a question.
Hi, it's me again. Okay. So two things. And obviously there's other students on that can ask some questions too, but like words of wisdom you have for students and for all of us, right? And then what is your next journey? Not that thinking about, where you are now, and it's not like you haven't thought about it or pondered it, but just curious as to, what's in the cards for you.
Yeah. So with the first question, just any added advice, I would say the number one thing, I don't know, currently that I'm thinking a lot about too is um, how I can consistently grow in my skill sets. Um, One of the bigger things I kind of struggled with is the hard skill aspect, and making sure that I'm, whatever projects that whatever you're working on in grad school now, whatever tools that you're using, I would say really emphasize those tools. Obviously, when you join a company, they'll have their own internal systems that you'll have to practice using. That the tools that I use right now, I hadn't used those before, but being able to practice on something, whether it's your project work, you're using Excel, if and there's so many other certifications and courses out there, even YouTube videos, and just trying to understand how you can find any qualitative work that's done, how to put measurable aspects to that. I think that is something that I noticed in my role that I didn't realize that would come up a lot, and something that I'm trying to grow in and practice. I would say try to keep that in mind when you're just preparing yourself, or even communicating through interviews or through cover letters, how you're putting a measure on and on the outcomes that on any outcomes that you've had through the work that you've done and things like that. That's something that I would put out there. And
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
And then sorry, the second question was where I see myself in my journey currently. I'm at a point where I really like what I'm doing, and it took me almost a year just to get familiar and comfortable with it. So I think right now I finally feel like, okay, I have some expertise in my role, and I want to continue to grow that way. But as I mentioned earlier, I love the company that I work for, so I have been, trying to also put myself out there internally, trying to have those informal chats with people within my company just to learn more about the business, because it's huge. There's so many things going on, and I feel like I'm in such a small portion of it. And especially just thinking about, geographically and as part of the business. So I'm trying to, have more conversations with matrix partners, with people in different roles, people in different states, within my company and even our, partnered companies, just to learn more about, where is the drive of the business? Where is it going? There's a lot of aspects that, are maybe not a part of the plan for the business growth. So it's important to know, what is going to be worth investing in, what's going to be worth putting myself out there in, because that's part of the trajectory of where the company's going. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now currently.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Anybody? I would like to open it. Anybody has any questions?
Lots of great questions today.
Thank you so much. You inspired. You have lit a fire in me. We'll see how long this goes.
No, yeah, thank you. I feel like I haven't spoken this much about myself, so it's different.
We have one more question. Yes, Monica.
Hi, Shivani. So I'm also in the dual degree MPH MBA, and I'm graduating in December. And as a graduating student who's like job searching, what kind of like terminology did you use when trying to find positions that kind of incorporated both the MPH and MBA? Because that's something that I'm kind of having trouble with at the moment.
Yeah. I would say there's so many things that you can use as a search. Obviously first I would use the degree, like saying, typing in MPH or MBA. Sometimes that would yield results, but other times I would literally find people on LinkedIn first, with the same background as me, and or in roles or companies that I found. Okay. And this takes time. I literally finding Cigna, I had no idea how I really found it. Like there's no way to really map it, but I would take days just to, click on a person, click on their company